Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the All New 52 podcast. I am Joe. This is my good friend Caleb. We like talking about comics on this podcast and occasionally manga. I fused manga and manga right when I said that.
You did.
We're rolling with it. And we're talking about manga this time around. We are going to be speaking and synopsizing and criticizing and critiquing Goodnight, PunPun.
That's a lot of things
Neo
to
Asano.
Do you think we'll have time to do all those things?
Is that like a reference into something? It sounded like you were like
No,
leaning into something.
It's just you said the exact same thing, but in like 5 different ways.
I know. It's called padding. You didn't need to call me out on it. Yeah. This is different from the occasional manga that I've brought to the show. In fact, it's very different. This is a manga that I've only recently heard of within the past year. But every time I've heard about it, whoever's been talking about it has not gone very deep into what it's actually about. And they're like, you kind of just need to read it for yourself.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'm going to start this episode with whatever we say. You kind of just need to read it for yourself.
There's only one way to know what's going on in PunPun, and that's to be the guy who wrote it, because I sure don't know what's going on in PunPun.
This is volume 1 in America, but that's a collection of volumes 1 and 2. So we only read part 1 of this.
Yeah,
which
the
is
first 12 chapters.
Yeah. We kept to our limit.
Which also, the chapters were shorter than usual manga chapters.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
I don't know how this was publicized or anything.
Okay.
But they definitely felt quicker after like the first 3.
Yeah, I got through them quicker, but then I had to take more breaks than usual because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. So let's get down to the synopsisizing. Goodnight, PunPun is about a young boy named PunPun, or young girl. I think he's supposed to be a boy.
Yeah, he's definitely supposed to be a boy because there's like some boys rule, girls rule stuff going on with his friend group.
Or they're just really progressive about this one girl.
I think if you only allow one person, then that's not progressive. That's just tokenism.
And PunPun is illustrated as this
ghost chicken.
He's a bird. Him and his entire family are like these like crude like bird sketches. Yeah. While everybody else is normal humans. They all look normal.
Yeah.
And then PunPun and his immediate family are all these like bird chicken things. And it is, well, this first part at least is the story of just PunPun in his everyday life and the actions and events that surround him.
But his everyday life does involve things like his dad beating his mother.
Yes.
And them finding a porno that has a murder confession taped over it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
I didn't know how fast you were going to jump into the first reveal of like, oh, this might not be what you expect kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, the first reveal to me was that God is in this.
We'll get to him. We will get to him. Yeah, that's about as much of a synopsis as I can give. PunPun has his childhood crush, of course, a girl named Aiko, who he's just madly in love with after the girl he was previously in love with moved away. So he immediately found a new crush.
And you find out that Aiko is, she thinks the world's going to end. And so he decides he's going to become an astronomer so he can Elon Musk this and get him and Aiko to Mars or something.
Yeah.
Or planet PunPun.
It's very, some of it's very fun and it's like childlike wonder. And then you get the pullback of like the very depressing world he's in.
Yes, and PunPun has no idea what's going. Like he just does not process.
No, he is a young boy. Like so, it's he doesn't realize all this stuff that's going on around him. Well, let's get out of the synopsis section and go into the art section, because I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about in our later segments.
Yeah, this is the only time when I know what I'm gonna say. Because the story's all over the place, but the art's pretty consistently good.
Yeah.
It's very comedic. I like the obvious contrast between PunPun and the other characters, but then it will go like hyper detailed to a comedic extent on some of these characters, and then to a creepy extent too.
I forget if he's showing up in this part or if it's in part 2, where it's this random cutaway to this just these two adults doing something. There's just this really creepy guy.
Oh, is it the principal and the teacher playing hide and seek?
Yes.
Love that. Love
so
that.
So weird, but it's so funny.
It's And then like his uncle meets this girl on a bridge too, and she's super hyper detailed and like kind of like anyone who gets hyper detailed to this is like uncanny valley levels of doing it.
Inio Asano. They know they're a pretty fine craftsman with their pen.
Yeah, because all the other kids just look like normal, well-designed characters that you'd see in manga. The backgrounds, normal, well-designed stuff that you'd see in manga. But then it's contrasted with comedic over-stylization and then the simplicity of PunPun.
Yeah, and it's that keyword of stylization. Like, this isn't a Berserk thing where it's like all the fine pen work, although that is here. It's not. It's like to the realistic standards of like, this is just a masterclass in art. They really know the style they're going for and how to make you uncomfortable with that styling.
And whenever PunPun talks, PunPun never has thought bubbles or speech bubbles. It's just a panel that's black with white text, which I think is part of the art because like it takes up space where art should be. But that kind of goes more into what lettering would be in American comics. But I always found that super effective and helped the pacing. Yeah,
PunPun's really interesting because he doesn't. It's not that he doesn't have speech bubbles. He doesn't talk really.
Yeah,
he's always doing like forms of nods and stuff, and they're
like,
having to draw what they're trying to express.
It's like Link in Legend of Zelda, where like other characters will talk to you, and then occasionally they'll go, "Oh, that's a weird thing to say."
Yeah,
but you never hear him talk.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like where it's like, "Oh, you could be PunPun," but like, I don't think you don't want to be PunPun. With what I hear how this goes, PunPun is very much supposed to be his own character.
I don't want to be PunPun.
The reason he's a bird is so that you don't have like this like pre-thought on how he's supposed to act and stuff.
Well, and also I just won't want to see a kid in this situation.
Oh, it's hilarious. He's a bird.
You do see other kids here, but like I wouldn't want to see a child in these situations. That would make me very uncomfortable.
Yeah. PunPun. What a story, PunPun.
Good night, PunPun.
Good night, PunPun. Wow, we're breezing through this. I'm not used to going this fast, but like I feel like we're about to come to a halt almost.
I don't know. Like I told you the other day, this is either going to be our longest or shortest episode.
PunPun's weird. PunPun is very, very weird. It is not your typical anything. I like because I do think it becomes, or it's trying to be a subversion of expectations where it's like, oh, there's this gritty, dark, real world stuff going on. Where like the dark stuff you don't want to talk about or read about, really, but they're trying to draw attention to it. I don't really know for what reason at this point, but it's the first 12 chapters of a story. It could go anywhere. But also, it just captures this childlike wonder of like a slice of life thing. And it's just a really odd combination of the two that I think really works.
It sometimes works.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll get more into
I've read a little bit further, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. This part one ends in a very bizarre place,
yeah,
too.
It does. It doesn't end in the most compelling of conclusional points. Yeah, do you want to start with positives? I think we're both on, like, not different planes, but, like, we don't really know what each other's gonna say about this.
Yeah, I don't feel like I got a good grasp on what this manga is supposed to be.
I did not either from the first part.
Yeah, so it's very hard for me to come up with like positives or negatives for that matter that stretch over all 12 chapters. So I'm going to do like very small individual things. There are some individual points of humor that I find really funny. Mm-hmm. The principal and the teacher playing hide and seek.
It's so weird.
It's the funniest thing in this book.
It's really good.
I like Aiko's design, and I think she's the type of character, and I've seen this in a couple other things, but it always works for me. We're like just a normal kid, and like, you know, she'll be going off, but then she'll be like, but if you do this, PunPun, I will kill you.
I will kill you. Yeah. I like that part. That would also like fall into my negatives things where it's like, it's weird seeing the kid stuff get like that serious where it's like just kid playtime. And it's like, I will murder you and your entire family if you cross me the wrong way.
The thing is, I don't think Aiko
No.
But it's just sometimes kids, especially kids from like more tough backgrounds like Aiko's, like they'll just say stuff like that.
Yeah, it's very jarring.
Yeah. Especially because you get the idea that she's attention deprived.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like grasping on to the fact that PunPun likes her. Wow, I really don't know what else.
I'll go for one.
There's a boy character who like constantly talks a big game about stuff and then kind of chickens out about doing it. And then you find out a little bit more about him, and it's very bizarre. But that's the first time you get into the eyes of a character outside of PunPun. I really like that too.
I'm gonna try my best not to take what I know from part 1 and part 2 because they're very intertwined and not like there's not a clear ending to this part. Really, it just stops. So I'll do my best. PunPun's a really endearing main character. He's like kind of weird and he's like kind of sad because he doesn't really know what's going on with his life, but you're aware of the things going on and much more aware than he is, and he's like grasping onto whatever little hope he can, and it's very endearing, and you want to see this little kid succeed. And then like there's stuff where he like has a crush on the girl that beat him up, and you're like, oh, this is really sad. Like something's wrong with you.
Does make sense knowing his parents' relationship.
Yeah. Like that's what he kind of sees as affection and stuff. They draw them in such a PunPun in such a like fun way to where like I like seeing PunPun more than the other people just because he's so much funnier to see in these realistic environments doing stuff. And when you see his little like stick hands coming out of stuff, PunPun's just a really fun main character to follow around.
And you're right. You were right earlier where he is simplistic enough that you can project stuff onto him, but then like very specific situational stuff comes up, which creates an interesting contrast. Which just leads into another thing I like. I really like how sound effects are used in this.
I didn't take note of that.
Because I think most notably, and this happens a couple times when PunPun runs, it will make like the motion lines become like the sound effect of him running.
Oh, that's cool.
But there's like a couple different clever uses of sound effects and how they play into the world of the panel.
Yeah. I think like I said before, the kind of childlike wonder that they get, the porno little arc that they have is weird. Don't get me wrong. But it's not something I necessarily did with my friends as a kid.
No, but also we grew up in a time when like, I don't know, porn was a lot more easy for us to find online.
Yes, that's very true.
So it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, but it is funny seeing these 11-year-olds like freak out about it, and they have a club for it. They have a club dedicated to it, and there's a whole plan of when they're going to watch it and stuff, and whose house they're going to do it at and stuff.
Well, and that's something I've seen like stuff set in the 80s a lot. It's like, hey, we found a Playboy in the woods.
Yeah. It's
really weird. I don't... We were also both of us were not that type of kid.
No, we weren't. But I'm projecting myself onto PunPun. I wanted this to be my life.
PunPun can have my childhood. I think he'd be much safer.
Yeah, he wouldn't be so rough. Let's talk about God.
I mean, God's the big positive here.
God's great. God's hilarious. PunPun has this little prayer that his uncle taught him, where his uncle said, whenever you like get in a bad situation or something, just say, what is it?
It's like
something tinkle hoy hoy.
Yeah, it's like tinkle tinkle hoy hoy. And then God pops up. Now, is God someone?
No. He's PunPun's imagination.
He is no. I mean like someone in real life.
Oh, maybe. I thought you meant is he just some weirdo in the book?
He is so specifically drawn that like if he like at first I thought it was the author, maybe, I don't know, but like he is someone.
And he's another person who he doesn't have speech bubbles. The words just like appear beside his head. He's like, hey, PunPun, you're being a little depressed, PunPun. Why don't you stop, PunPun?
And he's so unhelpful too. Like he never gives PunPun a straight answer.
Because it's PunPun just trying to rationalize his thoughts. I think it's brilliant. Because I just imagine PunPun said this prayer for the first time, didn't know what God was supposed to look like, saw some billboard of this weird smiling guy with an afro, and that's what he has imagined God to look like, and this is how he rationalizes stuff.
It's so weird. And that does lead into a negative, I guess, that I'll just touch on here. I feel like there's some cultural specific things I just can't get.
I think there are.
And I think I really think that this is supposed to be someone you recognize.
It's funny without it.
So, oh yes, no, God is the funniest part in this book, but And I kind of wish God had shown up more a little bit. But I also do like the payoff for that is that he then hears his uncle go on a rant about how God doesn't exist.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't know if that was a part 2 thing because that felt like a later thing. I think that's brilliant writing about how his uncle came up with this coping mechanism for PunPun, and then for PunPun to have it like shatter around him almost.
Yeah.
It's like it's devastating and just brilliant. How'd you like the first chapter twist?
I mean, I felt like it was building to something. And I think that's the big thing for Goodnight PunPun is it feels like it's building to something. And at least in the first chapter and some of the subsequent ones, it paid off. Like it's like, oh, that's what we've been building to.
Yeah. You're like, this feels like it's meandering. What are we going towards? And you're like,
yeah.
Oh.
Now, I don't think that's true for the entire 12 chapters.
No.
But I'm not going to fault that for the book because who says that 12 chapters has to be how long your story is? That's just where we arbitrarily cut it off. And it's collected in 24 chapters. So like it's not a collection problem either.
Yeah. Yeah, that payoff. I knew that this place goes dark going into this. And I because every time I hear it's like people are like, yeah, they're like, it's been sitting on my shelf. I'm just not emotionally ready to hate myself for like a day or something like that. And I was like, okay, so where does this go? And then that first thing happened, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
that's where we're at. And it's really effective. And it's especially even more like hopeless when PunPun has this like really nice moment with his father the night before. He gifts him the telescope and PunPun's so happy about it. And he's like, oh, I finally figured out what I want to do. Because you get the feeling that PunPun and his dad, like PunPun idolizes his dad, but like they just don't have a good relationship for whatever reason. And it's just devastating the next day where he's like, we got robbed, PunPun. You believe me, right? Like, you're like, oh God.
And then constantly throughout the rest of the book, he's asking when dad's coming home. And no one's telling him anything.
Dad's not coming home, PunPun.
And also, like, one of the other characters has a really bad relationship with their dad, too. Like, they're an alcoholic whose business went under. And it's like, wow, no one has good parents in this world.
We say goodnight, PunPun, because the day is miserable.
Sleep is the only refuge our boy can get.
I feel like any other positives I have will just kind of be reiterating the same points. I think the kid dynamic between everyone's really good. Like you said, it always feels like it's building towards something, even if it does feel like it's meandering at times. You're like, well, this is thoughtful meandering. This isn't because the writer doesn't know what they don't want to do at this point. Yeah, overall, lots of positives for weird Goodnight PunPun. But we have a negative section as well. And you have a look on your face.
I'm trying to figure out how to approach this because like the positives, I find it very hard to find overarching things. So why don't you go first? Maybe that'll help me formulate some ideas.
I've touched on a little things how like I think the kids act really realistically, and then it's weirdly unrealistic in certain situations. It's for comedic purposes, but it's a little jarring when you'll have such these endearing scenes followed by. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. A kid will just say something really weird, and I think it's being played off as a joke, but I'm not 100% sure. And I've said the meandering like doesn't feel bad, but it does meander at points.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I don't know what this is like doing right now, and like the payoff makes it worth it, but it stays like treading water for a little too long at times.
I think kind of related to that, I think there's too much going on, like between everything that's going on with the porn club and his parents and Aiko's mother and like all this stuff compiling. I think maybe it's a little too scattershot at points.
Yeah. I'm really wondering. I'm guessing this was published weekly because normally just stuff like this with chapters and stuff is. Who would latch onto this from like the first chapter and stuff? It's so weird. It's so out there.
I mean, the first chapter is my favorite.
Yeah, first chapter, maybe not, but like on a weekly basis.
Yeah, like I don't think it ever gets better than chapters 1 and 2. Which I guess is a negative, but also
you hook your readers in with the first couple chapters. It's the first Striker thing. You're building towards your first chapter your entire life, then you have a week to make the next one.
Yeah, I don't like. I wish they were all on par with them, but I think it's not like they get bad after that.
Yeah, we start at the top of the hill, and it's maybe not a sharp drop off, but it's like, well, we never quite reached that peak
Yeah.
ever again.
Yeah, man. I can't think of anything. Not because there isn't stuff there. Like, I wouldn't say I enjoyed reading this.
Okay.
It was an exercise more than it was entertainment. That's not to say I wouldn't read more,
Mhm.
because I really do think it's building to something.
Yeah.
Is it just these 24 chapters?
Oh no, there's 6 double volumes like this, and then one small one. So it's 7 volumes complete.
Okay.
And it's
Wow.
like a little under 100 chapters or something like that.
That does seem emotionally exhausting to
Yeah.
read that much of this.
Yeah. And PunPun grows up. PunPun grows into like a 25-year-old man over the course of that.
Interesting. But yeah, I don't have any direct negatives, but I feel like that's just because I need to read more.
Yeah. Yeah, for purely going off these first 12 chapters, it ends in a very unsatisfying place of like middle of one of these meandering moments where like you just don't really know what the point is.
It's clearly not supposed to be the end to part 1.
Yeah. But it is, because that's how it was originally collected for some reason. I guess that's just the number they decided
which
on.
is why I think here they've done the double collections.
Yeah, and it ends in a much better part in part 2. So, but 24 chapters was way too much. Even if like when we read Berserk, we read 600 pages, but it was only like 5 chapters.
But that was also collected after Berserk was a huge deal.
Yeah.
So how old is this?
I don't know, actually. I think it's like more recent. Wow, that is not a lot of. PunPun came out in 2007.
Okay, I expected it to be a little bit more recent than this.
I did too.
This comes off very much as kind of the Gen Z, I want to die humor.
I wouldn't go. Okay, I can get that it comes off like that, but
Not a bad thing either. I find,
okay.
Yeah.
You just think it like I don't know, thought ahead in its humor. It was
Yeah,
like, wow,
yeah.
I kind of predicted this humor. Like,
a little bit.
I predicted it really ahead. That's like a good 10-year margin of
Yeah.
like when that humor was getting really, really huge.
It's tapped into the time stream.
You're going through the Speed Force with Barry Allen. You see PunPun like waddling next to you on his scooter.
Good night. As you pass, good night.
Then you say, tinkle, tinkle, hoy, hoy. God's poking out.
And I'm like, who are you? Were you a guy that he passed in the street before writing this?
Probably.
Honestly, yeah. He probably
That would have made way more sense.
pulled out a notepad. I was like, I gotta get all this down. This was my barista at Starbucks.
I think you're right. And this may be our shortest episode or our longest episode. Goodnight, PunPun. It's neither.
Yeah,
but there is a lot to talk about. Yet nothing.
Yeah,
It's bizarre. It's bizarre. This is a book that like is impossible to like really quantify in words.
but that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Like I didn't enjoy reading this. I don't dislike it though.
Yeah.
Like I think it's a really good.
No, this was another
manga.
slow read for me where I
Yeah.
was like, it was like, okay, I read like 3 chapters at a time, and I can usually bust through like a normal volume of manga in like an hour or 2.
Yeah, these are shorter chapters.
And these are
too.
short chapters. I was just taking a break in between, like,
It's like, okay, I
don't
have to process
quite
this.
comprehend what's happening in front of me.
But I like weird stuff.
Mhm.
So
It hits weird in the right places. It also hits it in the wrong places. It's just a crockpot of everything that's
Yeah.
like a slow cook to where you don't know where it's going, but it's definitely going to something.
yeah. Wow, really weird.
Yeah, but entertaining. I think Goodnight PunPun gave us a good episode out of it at the very least.
Yes, and I'm glad I read it. I hope you bring it back a second time. Maybe give me a minute.
Yeah, for sure. But we have a book
We
to
do.
read next week. Another no surprises on here for the past month.
No, because we're doing another crossover with our friend Steven, who is on my podcast, Star Wars Therapy, and is in one of Joe's bands.
Yes.
And he has picked one of a comic I've heard him talk about a lot because he loves this.
Since I've known him.
Yes. Tom King and Mitch Gerard's Mr. Miracle, which I'm super excited about because it's like fourth world stuff. And I think fourth world stuff is conceptually very cool.
time for something I know nothing about. New Gods.
Yeah, well, I only know a little bit more than you.
Yeah.
So, and it hasn't been from reading comics. It's been from reading Wikipedia pages. So,
The comic book reader's best friend.
oh yeah, really. But I am excited, and especially just with how much Steven has talked about this casually, I think he'll have a lot of cool stuff to say when we get him on.
So we'll be back in 2 weeks with that. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed our crazy ramblings on Goodnight PunPun, or you have thoughts on it, because I know this is successful. More people have read this. This isn't some deep cut I'm going for. Talk about it with us with your reviews and feedback on the podcast platform of your choice by emailing us at allnew52podcast@gmail.com. We love taking more suggestions. Or who is God? Tell me who is God.
Tinkle,
Someone,
tinkle,
please.
Hoy, hoy.
Someone, please. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with our friend Steven and Mr. Miracle.
Good night, PunPun.